Welcome back to Ladies of Another View, and I'm going to welcome back Paul Driessen with CFACT. He's a policy analyst with Committee for a Constructive Tomorrow, known as CFACT, and he specializes in a lot of different things, including the environment and weather. Welcome back to the show, Paul.
Thanks so much for having me back. I always enjoy being with you.
Well, we love having you because you talk sense. We like people that are sensible. And you recently have an article that I saw published in a number of different periodicals. You're in this one, it was in the Eurasia Review as well as others. UN, EU, ICJ, climate cabal want to keep the poor impoverished. So they proclaim a human right to a clean environment, but in reality, by not counting on reliable energy, they're actually hurting the poor and causing people to be poor, right?
Absolutely. I mean, if you don't have access to affordable, reliable, and plentiful energy, electricity perhaps especially, but transportation fuels and heating fuels and so forth, you have nothing. You're just going to be living in poverty all your life, and your children will continue doing so. And if you have it taken away or priced out of your ability to afford it, you find your living standards just slashed. And that's what's happening over in Europe. And you go back to President Obama when he was in Africa, what, 15, 20, 30 years ago. I don't recall exactly when this was, but he said we cannot afford to let the poor people of Africa have the living standards that we have in the United States or in Europe, because if they have cars and air conditioning and modern heating and all that electricity, the world is going to boil over. Well, we haven't seen much of that. Temperatures have gone up very little since not just the dawn of the modern industrial age, but that happened to coincide with the end of the little ice age. So you cannot separate what warming may have occurred because of industry versus what warming occurred because natural forces ended the little ice age that had gone on for almost 500 years.
Well, I know also in more recent times, you talk in your article about the UN and EU, this climate cabal that's trying to keep people impoverished. In Europe, they're refusing to go with gas and oil. And I know we've seen a pushback against that here in the United States, not so much in this administration, but past. What do you think is really behind that? Do you see something more nefarious there?
I think what they're talking about ultimately is controlling our lives, our livelihoods, our living standards, driving our standards of living downward, maybe raising the rest of the world's a little bit from mud huts and so forth to what you can have if you've got access to, say, wind and solar power 25% of the years, which is what it boils down to, at totally unpredictable times, totally weather dependent, and the rest of the time you have no electricity. They don't even get into the question of how much of our lives depend on products that come from petrochemicals, the paints, the plastics, pharmaceuticals, cosmetics. You look out there and 6,000 products that we use almost every day are made from petrochemicals. You lock all that oil and gas in the ground, you give up all of that as well. So it's not just electricity, it's not just energy to heat your home, whether it's natural gas or electric heat or oil, or over in Africa, burning cow dung and wood and grass in order to warm up your home on a cold night. It's everything in your life that they want to take away, and they want to tell us that if we don't do this, all kinds of cataclysmic things are going to happen to our climate and to wildlife and our lands. The latest one I saw just yesterday is that climate change is giving Florida dolphins Alzheimer's disease. Now,
Wow.
yeah, I don't know where they came up with that. I'm not sure why we should be worried about it. But I think what we should be worrying about is having our living standards, our health care, our schools, our daily activities disrupted by continuous blackouts by having no access to electricity. And we're just supposed to be happy when we have electricity and not bellyache about the days and hours and weeks when we don't have electricity. The whole thing is complete nonsense, but it's tyrannical nonsense. And it ultimately is deadly nonsense because people are going to die from this, just as they do in Africa on a regular basis. Burning these wood and dung and other fuels for fires cause tremendous lung diseases. Not having access to electricity, to have a refrigerator, and to have clean water means millions more are dying from parasites in the water. They get cold at night. They are more likely to die from communicable and other diseases that they probably wouldn't even get if they had modern living standards. But if they don't have the decent living standards, any disease becomes far more deadly.
Well, we know the elites are hypocrites because they are not talking about reducing their carbon footprint. And plus, we need carbon to make the plants grow. And the wind and solar energy is not good for the environment. It's not good for people. And yet they keep pushing it. And then, so they're not true environmentalists. I know some have come to the way of recognizing they care about these endangered species like the right whale and the birds that are being decimated by wind towers. So there's a few that are like, oh, wait a minute, what's going on here? So they have mixed emotions. But there's a climate conference coming up that we're going to talk about. We're going to take a break. We're going to talk about the climate conference. It's the 30th annual one in Brazil. And more evidence is coming out that, wait a minute, all these dire predictions haven't come to pass. Doesn't mean they're not coming up with new ones. But little by little, people are starting to see the light and saying, wait a minute here. This stuff you're promoting isn't even good for the environment. And none of these predictions are coming true. So when we come back, I want you to talk about this 30th conference that's going to take place in Brazil and how the light is starting to break through when we come back.
Hello and welcome to the MHA Interpretive Center. It's the perfect stop along the Lewis and Clark Trail and the cultural hub of the Mandan, Hiradza, and Arikara Nation. Nestled along the shores of Lake Sagaguia in Newtown, North Dakota, 1 mile west of the Four Bears Casino. You can enjoy amphitheater performances, art exhibitions, and educational workshops utilizing our living cultural center. Enjoy some coffee, browse our gift shop, and learn about the original people of this land. Learn more at mhanation.com/interpretive center.
West River Equipment of Mandan is here to help you maintain peak productivity in your operation. As an authorized dealer for many high-quality equipment lines, we have the new and used equipment it takes to make your farming, ranching, or construction operation profitable and efficient. West River Equipment also has the parts on hand and the experienced technicians in our shop to get your equipment back in action fast. Find what you need at West River Equipment on Old Red Trail in Mandan.
I'm $27,000 in credit card debt.
You have to radically do something different, because if you keep doing what you've been doing, you're going to keep getting what you've been getting.
Now's not the time to be doing math. The time to be doing math was when we didn't go into $200,000 of debt.
If you are freaked out and you're stuck in these debt payments and you think it has to be a part of your life, it doesn't.
Hey y'all, it's Trent on the loose. I want to tell you, Lady Blue and I, we got a lot of miles together, but you know what? You and I got a lot of miles together as well. And all I want to do is bring to you the information on how we maintain a domestic supply of food and fuel for future generations. I'm going to continue to travel the world and unearth the stories that make it possible that we can live in a free United States of America.
We're from North Dakota, where 12,000 workers bring electricity to 2 million customers and provide over $5 billion in economic activity to the state, while reclaiming 22,000 acres of land. This is coal country.
Welcome back to the show, and I want to welcome back our guest, Paul Driessen, who is a policy analyst with CFACT, Committee for a Constructive Tomorrow, and you specialize in looking at the environment and the climate. And there's an upcoming climate conference, the 30th, in Brazil this year. Tell us a little bit about what's going to happen there. It's been going on for 30 years, for heaven's sake.
Yeah, it's crazy. Every year they do kind of the same thing. They fly in hundreds, maybe thousands of people on private jets so they can be there as scientists and observers and politicians and activists. And then they have the conference in as much as they can in five-star hotels and five-star restaurants. They talk and talk and talk and talk about how the environment is going all to hell because of man-made human use of fossil fuels, and how we have to get rid of all the fossil fuels, switch to wind and solar, and this is somehow going to save the planet from climate crises that really exist only in computer models and scary headlines. So at the end, they have a bunch of proposals. They say, we are going to make these agreements and everybody's going to cut back. And if they don't, there's going to be a price to pay and the whole world's going to fall apart and species are going to die. It goes on, and then they adjourn and they come back in another year and do the same thing over and over again. Well, this time they actually had to widen a road from the area where people are going to be able to arrive in Brazil to the place where the climate conference is being held in Belém, in order to allow people to actually get there. And to build this expanded road, they had to cut down 100,000 trees in the Brazilian rainforest, or jungle as we used to call it, and they paved the whole thing with asphalt, which is made from petrochemicals, from hydrocarbons, from fossil fuels. So again, there's no rhyme or reason, no credibility. There's a lot of hypocrisy, a lot of craziness, but it ends up being very serious, very dangerous, very deadly hypocrisy.
Well, I know even in a lot of the attenders and the people who are buying into all of this, they're nervous because there's an increasing amount, you say, of evidence that's demonstrating that the claims that they have of this planetary crisis are rooted in meaningless computer models. It's not functioning. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, if you actually look at the temperature increases, it's been very modest. It's hardly dangerous. You look at the carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere, they have basically doubled since the end of the Little Ice Age back around 1850, when we also started to have our industrialization process. And we're at a point, we're not at any point of optimum. We're much better off having this extra carbon dioxide in the Earth's atmosphere, because plants grow faster and better, and with less water, they're less impacted by droughts, because they don't have to open the little pores, the stomata, that allow them to absorb carbon dioxide. They don't have to open those as far. So that also means they're not exhausting more water, emitting more water from the leaves and other parts of the plant as they would in a carbon dioxide poor environment. So there's a lot of benefits, and you're seeing the planet greening more and more. The grasslands, the forests, and even the deserts are getting much greener. Crops are growing better. There's a lot of benefits to having that extra carbon dioxide, and they never want to talk about any of that. And yet none of the crazy apocalyptic things that they've been talking about actually have happened. We're not having more hurricanes, more frequent or more deadly hurricanes or tornadoes. We're not having more frequent or deadly droughts or rainfalls. It's been pretty much the same. And all you have to do is go to the actual sources on hurricanes, for example, that make landfall in the United States. We've been tracking that since 1850, and there is no pattern, no increase, no change from the completely randomness of it that we've seen for the past 150 years until today. So it's just a lot of nonsense. There's a lot of screaming and hollering, a lot of stuff that comes out of computers that are fed the notion that more carbon dioxide is going to change the temperature, kill off wildlife, and so forth. But if that's your assumption put into the computer, then every time you show a higher level of carbon dioxide, you're going to get all those results. But it's all mumbo jumbo, garbage in, garbage out. There's no reality to it.
So I have a brother who's an atmospheric scientist, and he said the only place that carbon dioxide is a poison is in politics. And so, yeah, you're getting a lot of stories here. I think it's. I have a little quote I want to put up because Donald Trump talked before the UN General Assembly, and he also excoriated net zero policies before the UN General Assembly, calling them a green scam concocted by stupid people that have cost their countries fortunes and given those same countries no chance for success. And that is one of the reasons why our United States economy is doing better than theirs, because they're all suffering now. They just forged ahead with these net zero, green policies, and it hasn't worked very well for them. So when you go to this conference, we've got Europe versus the United States. The agenda you're pushing hasn't served Europe well. Your dire predictions haven't come true. And I know they often go from like the 1940s on, because if you start with the 1930s, if you even go back as far as the 1930s, you see more hurricanes, more drought, more extreme weather. And so they have to control the message, right? Do people like you show up there and cause havoc? Do you have an opportunity to talk with people and speak out?
We have an opportunity to talk with a lot of people and speak out. We don't have much of an opportunity to do it on record as actual participants in these conferences. Our points of view are typically excluded. They don't want to hear this. And thank goodness we have President Trump. I don't think he's going to send a delegation to this COP. If he does, they will stir things up even more, because what he has to say and what this administration has to say and what more and more scientists are saying is that this is just a scam. This is just scandalous waste of money on wind and solar and other projects that are actually going to have devastating consequences for the Earth's environment, for wildlife, for birds and bats, from wind turbines, all kinds of wildlife from areas, thousands and thousands of acres being blanketed by wind turbines and by solar panels, by all the mining that goes on, the disposal of the mine waste, the pollution that results from the processing of those raw materials into something we can actually use. So there's on and on. The effects of this whole global warming agenda are tremendously harmful. And in the end, you're leaving people who today don't have electricity, and there's 750 million people around the world, mostly in sub-Saharan Africa, who still do not have access to electricity. I can't imagine my life without electricity, abundant, reliable, and affordable. And you look at what's going on in Britain, for example, where they've totally drunk the climate crisis Kool-Aid, and they're paying 35 cents a kilowatt hour. Their experts there are saying this is going to be 55 cents a kilowatt hour in another year or two. And that's compared to an average of about 17 cents a kilowatt hour here in the United States and 13 cents a kilowatt hour in Mississippi. Mississippi is our poorest state in the union. And yet the average income today for a person in Mississippi is higher than the average income in Britain. That's how much they've screwed up their economy.
God bless America, and messages like what you have to deliver in CFACT is getting through to people, and hopefully more and more people will realize it's just a scam and not participate in it, because it only hurts people. So thank you, Paul, and I know we'll be talking to you again soon. We like to keep hearing what the latest is on the climate front, so thank you.
Never ending, and thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you. And when we come back, it's time for the lighter side. We're going to talk about shyness. Are you shy? Do you have children that are shy? We're going to explore that when we come back.